everybody. Welcome to the Hello Road podcast, the podcast where we talk about unique and forgotten cars, road trips, travel, car adventures, and that kind of stuff. Liam Nissan. We can talk about Liam Nissan again. We talked about that last time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What else can we talk about, Paul?
Pabst Blue Ribbon?
Pabst Blue Ribbon? Oh, yeah. You're not drinking the official beer of the podcast, though. I'm a little.
I know.
The official beer of the Hello Road podcast is Golden Road Wolf Pup Session.
It is.
Even though they're not sponsoring this podcast, they should.
They should.
Yeah.
Yes, it is very delicious. But when you're in a pinch and you only got $8.99 in your pocket, I mean,
sure,
you can't go wrong.
Yep. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Pabst Blue Ribbon. As you can see, the Golden Road is kicking in. So I think last episode we talked about, we did the Q&A. We didn't have quite as much beer when we did that one. I think this one will be a little bit different because we've got some beer in our gullets. And I think we should maybe, if we have any car updates. I know you were talking about some Daihatsu wheel stuff. What's going on with that?
So when I got the car, the wheels, I mean, they're just the steel wheels, and the finish was kind of coming off of them.
Sure.
And so myself and one of my good friends, and in the summertime, after I got the car, actually went through and painted the wheels a nice fresh silver color. And if you watch shows like, Wheeler Dealers and, all these like car restoration shows, they like go through and it's like very, very professional, and they take the tires off and, they get powder coated. Yeah, I didn't do any of that crap.
Okay. So you painted your tires essentially.
Well, no, I did a better masking job on this, but I do have a funny quick story involving my Mini Cooper.
Okay.
Probably 3 months after I had gotten the Mini Cooper, I decided I wanted black wheels, and being dirt poor, just to able to afford my Mini Cooper, I couldn't get them. So I could afford some spray paint, and so I painted my wheels, and I figured black is the same color as the tires. So that didn't really end very well.
Okay. Well, so you ruined your wheels and your tires, is what you're saying.
No, the wheels looked good.
Oh, they did. Okay.
They came out okay. Yeah, they look like crap. But no, so we took a lot more care and effort in painting the wheels this time. So it's all well and good that the silver's on there, but in all honesty, it probably would have been a little bit better if I had spent even more time on it. So now that I've done this a few times, I kind of want to give it another shot, but I want to change the color on the wheels, which is just something fun to do. I don't want to do anything crazy like pink or something like that.
I think you should do white. White wheels.
I thought about that.
Yeah.
White's a definite option, but I was thinking something along the lines of kind of like not a full-on black, but like a kind of a dark metallic
slate or something,
gray or something like that. And on my Instagram, if you scroll down, there's a picture I posted up by Philip Ackerman, I believe is his name, and he does like drawings of different cars, and he did something for the Mighty Car Mods guys on YouTube, and one of their first cars they messed around with was a Charade. And so it's a Charade, but it's like all dumped and looks cool and has grayish steelies on it. So that's kind of where I'm getting this inspiration from. It's not going to look a damn thing like it.
Sure.
But it might be cool.
One can dream. I mean, you're taking a step towards that direction.
Yeah. And I got to change something up a little bit, because, the car has kind of been the same look for a while, and I don't have a whole ton of resources to just dump into the car to change things up on it. But, it's those little things like that I've already kind of ruined the originality of the wheels anyways by painting them back to silver. So why not? We'll just paint them again.
Yeah.
So I was thinking that, and then also the bumpers. They're a very simple black textured bumper, but over the years, the sun has faded them pretty substantially. Like a lot of the pictures you see of it, like from like the Radwood shows, they look amazing because I have a really great product from Adams Polishes that goes through and like turns the dingiest looking black trim into from like a whitish gray to like the way it's supposed to look.
Sure. Okay.
So it looks really good when it's all done, but I'm thinking they have like I wouldn't say it's like a textured paint, but they have a paint that's meant for like the plastic trims like that. And I've seen it done in the past in the Mini Cooper community, because the Mini Coopers, at least the ones like I had those arches that were on them, and people would always like
Yep.
try to paint them,
Sure.
and the paint would always flake off of them. So I don't know. So we'll see. I'm gonna give it a shot, and hopefully it doesn't look like total crap.
Yeah.
But
So is that basically just an unpainted piece of plastic? It's just the black is actually the
yeah,
pigment within the plastic, like
hmm
like a lot of '80s.
yeah.
Okay. Um, I had read somewhere, and I don't know if this is. I don't know much about it, but I've seen somebody do this on a Honda Element that had all that
Oh
gray
yes.
plastic cladding on it. Where apparently there's a way you can do it with a heat gun that actually brings some of that pigment back to the front. Like if you like heat it up, I think it
Hmm.
can bring that black pigment to the surface. But I think it's from what I had read. I mean, like I don't know a whole lot about this, but from what I had read, it seemed like it's very difficult to find the balance of like bringing the pigment to the forefront versus just melting all of the plastic.
Right, right. And that's something that there's certain things I'll take chances on with a car, but things like
Yeah.
losing a bumper because I played with a heat gun around it,
Yeah.
that's kind of scary.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be rough. That'd be rough
Mhm.
because not easy to find another Daihatsu Charade bumper.
Nope.
No. Whereas it's probably pretty easy to find some crappy looking body cladding for a
Honda
recent
Element.
Honda Element. Yep. Yep. So forget I said that. There's probably a way you can do it that doesn't completely screw it up, but yeah, I wouldn't want to mess that up.
Yeah. So yeah,
Uh
so those are kind of some ideas bouncing around in my head. They're not horribly expensive. It's literally the cost of my time and paint.
sure.
But yeah, I think it would kind of change the look of the car up just a little bit and make it look a little nicer, maybe.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I'm trying to go for that, I still need to paint the hood
Sure.
on that thing because I tried to paint it myself and it came out like garbage.
Sure.
Um,
What did you just use a rattle can or did you
I just
actually
used a rattle can in
okay.
my shed in my backyard that
Sure.
before I moved all the crap in it from the garage, I was like, well, it's going to be my paint booth for now. And that was
Sure.
a mistake for obvious reasons.
What you
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see if I can get some a better paint job on it.
sure.
I got a friend that owes me some painting after I let him
Oh, well,
use
that's good.
yeah yeah let
So
him
you don't
use
have
my
to like go
backyard
to
to do
like
an engine swap. So
okay. So you don't have to like try to hack something together with like a cheap Harbor Freight paint gun and some
I
tarps and stuff like that.
I thought about it.
Yeah. Okay. But you're
Maybe
not
I'll
gonna
do
do
it.
that. Yeah. All right. All right. Well, that's nice to see. There's some progress going with your Daihatsu.
Hmm.
Um, again, not much going on with my fleet of vehicles. They're just kind of sitting there. Actually, we're making some updates to Liam Nissan. I think I mentioned a couple episodes ago, we're putting in a fire suppression system. We're also trying to figure out what's going on with the car just being down on power. We did determine that the cam timing is correct. It's
Hmm.
not off. It's not off by anything. Um, so
Hmm.
now we're just scratching our heads. We were pretty sure that it had something to do with that. We thought it might be off might be off a tooth. But it seems fine. Compression tests fine. Um, we're just we're scratching our heads and we might just go back to the basics and feel like, okay, just throw some new spark plugs in it, maybe throw some new wires in it, new, the cap and rotor look fine. That so much of the stuff just looks fine.
Hmm.
The only thing we were thinking that it might be is maybe somehow we have like a clogged catalytic converter or something. So we might try to just chop that off, just disconnect that and just drive it around for a little bit and see if we can A B it, see if
Yeah.
it feels a little bit better. Obviously, it'd be louder, but um, yeah. So that's really kind of the only thing we're working on right now is just trying to figure out what's going on with our 24 Hours of Lemons vehicle.
Hmm.
Um, other than that, all my other old cars are kind of just sitting. So there is a possibility. I haven't worked this out completely, but there's a possibility I might be getting yet another press car, which I'm super excited about.
Mm.
And that would be the 2020 Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross.
Ooh.
So that vehicle is controversial in a few
Yes.
different ways. I think number one, for anybody that remembers the original Mitsubishi Eclipse, there's a lot of love behind that vehicle. I think a lot of those people were very disappointed when Mitsubishi decided to use that name on a crossover.
There's plenty
Um,
of names out there. Why did they have to
sure,
go back to that? They could
exactly.
have.
I don't know. I don't know why they did that either, but
It's a little
um,
baffling.
sure. I think maybe they figured that anybody that had an original Eclipse or was interested in an original Eclipse, maybe the target market is not this vehicle, and they didn't care. I'm not sure. Um, and there's, I sort of like, I'm interested in testing this car out, and I hope they let me drive one. Mainly because I like, I like a lot of what Mitsubishi has done in the past, and
Mhm.
I'm rooting for them. I know everybody sort of likes to crap on them because they're maybe not doing so well. I feel like I read that their sales are kind of up. There's a little uptick, and I'm rooting for them to like actually like make a comeback so they can bring something like a new Evo
Right.
back here. So yeah, I'm sort of interested to see how it stacks up versus the competition. Obviously that's a huge, the Eclipse Cross is in that area of just all sorts of really good crossovers. So we'll see how it is, but that'll also be kind of a fun one to take on a little road trip. I'm actually thinking I want to try to take it to the Museum of Pinball. Have you ever heard of this place?
No, uh-uh.
So this place is in Banning, California. Apparently, it's got like, I don't know, thousands of pinball machines, and I'm not even really that into pinball, but just the fact that this place exists is insane. So if you just like search for Museum of Pinball and like just look at the pictures of this place, it's just rows and rows and rows and rows of all sorts of pinball machines in this huge warehouse in the middle of the desert. And it seems really cool to go to. It's only open a few days out of the year for special events because apparently the amount of electricity that it takes to run this place is just insane. Because these are not efficient machines. Uh, so I'm super excited to go. They're having an event. I think it's the late October that I want to try to coordinate with the, hopefully if I can get this vehicle, to take this vehicle out there and kind of experience that pinball mecca. So, and again, I'm not like a big pinball fan. It just seems like if I have the opportunity to do something kind of crazy like that, I'm going to totally try to do it. So, um, yeah, that's hopefully I can get this Mitsubishi. And actually, I was also kind of interested in checking out the, um, some of the other Mitsubishi products just because like I I I really want to check out the Mirage. I
Yeah.
really want to check out some. I don't know if that's currently the cheapest car you can get anymore, or it was at one point. I'm not sure if it is, but um, I think I have some love for the Mirage, just in the sense that I like inexpensive,
Yep.
small cars, and even if it's kind of cheap and basic, I like the idea of that kind of car, and I'm
Oh,
glad
yeah,
that
totally.
there's somebody that's still making something like that.
Yeah, I love the Mirage. I mean, it's three-cylinder family for me.
Yes,
But
yes,
no, it's a cool little car, and you don't see things like that anymore besides the Mirage. There's, even like the newest Kia Rio is like fairly upmarket in comparison, I would think. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, you can get a Mirage with like a rear camera and everything like that, but it
mhm.
also just when you look at the vehicle, it just takes me back to hatchbacks of the '90s,
Yeah.
really.
Oh,
You
totally.
know, so that's kind of why I kind of dig it. So maybe
Well,
that'll be the
probably
next
not
summer.
hard to convince Mitsubishi to give you a press car loaner of a Mirage.
Maybe they'll just give me one. I'm not sure. We'll
Yeah,
find
and they
out.
might just show up with like 10 of them and be like, "Go crazy, do what you want."
We'll just start a spec Mirage racing series, which I
That's
think
been
needs to
talked
happen.
about.
Yep.
That has been talked about. That would
Yep.
be a ton of fun.
Yep. All right. So let's dive into the Q&A. We got some leftover questions. I wouldn't say leftover. That makes them sound like these are like the dregs of the questions that we didn't want to get to. This is just we just didn't get to everything.
We just
So
didn't get to everything.
we didn't
Exactly.
get to everything. So
And you're the one that
um
can read them because I can't read because I'm illiterate. But
that's
that,
true.
that's a different story.
That is true. We won't get into that
That's
now,
for
but
another
if
episode. But yeah,
somebody wants to we have a little GoFundMe for your reading classes, that would be good.
that'd be good.
So Alien Flora on Instagram. What current car manufacturer has the most confusing product line?
Oh.
And I can I start with this one because
Oh
I have
yeah,
something
yeah,
that
yeah.
I have something
Go
that
ahead.
gets me a little fired up. So I will say that let me start with what I think has been really not confusing. I think Mazda, just in terms of their product naming, has been super consistent, super easy to understand. When you look at their product line, you understand, okay, you got a 3, you got a 6. Okay, the 3 is not quite as big or quite as good. You got the
Mhm.
CX3, the CX5, the CX9. It's really easy to see the hierarchy there.
Yeah.
But then they screwed it all up by introducing the CX30. This drives me insane. So it's not out yet, but they've introduced the CX30. So the CX30 slots in between the CX3 and the CX5, which doesn't make any sense. I guess they So basically, I'm pretty sure why they call it the CX-30 is because there's a CX-4 in other markets, and just you'd think just call it the CX-4 because it slots in between the CX-3 and the CX-5. But apparently, there's another one, a CX-4 in other markets that's a different vehicle. So maybe they thought it would be confusing or something.
Oh
Um,
man,
so I
my
don't
brain
understand. It's like
hurts.
Mazda had like for the longest time perfect naming. Like I couldn't think of a better company to represent how to like properly name vehicles. Like they had it figured out and then they screwed it all up by introducing the CX-30. Like yeah, you can kind of understand okay, it's not better than the CX-9, but it just you screwed up your whole beautifully consistent hierarchy and it
Mhm.
drives me nuts. Anyway, so that's and I think that thing why it like it really kind of hits home for me is it just it Mazda. I really like Mazda vehicles, and I like the way they're designed and like everything about it. Like it just made a lot of sense to me, and now they just screwed it up. So anyway, so in terms of what the most confusing product line, I was tempted to say maybe Acura just because I think their product names are kind of whack. But then I was thinking maybe Cadillac because they're sort of like halfway between changing their naming scheme just in terms of
Right.
like I mean, I couldn't really think of a brand that the product lineup was that confusing. Just mainly like the way that they name things. It would not be as easy to figure out if you were like not a car enthusiast.
Mhm.
And then I was thinking, well, maybe Mitsubishi because they've got 3 crossovers for sale, and I don't really know what separates them. But, like I said before, I definitely want to cut them some slack because I know that they're trying to rebuild their US, sales and their lineup and everything. So, I think ultimately, after thinking about all the brands that are confusing, I'm going to go with Chrysler. So, this is a brand that obviously is, as everybody knows, has been around for decades. And I've got a question for you, Paul. And I don't know if you know the answer to this. And don't Google this if you don't. I'm curious if you know how many models they sell right now.
I do.
You do. Okay. Okay. You do know. I was surprised when I found this out. They sell 2 vehicles.
Yes.
They sell the 300 and the Pacifica, and
Yep.
that's it.
That's
And
all they have.
I'm just confused how they ended up there. Like, how did that happen? I mean, years of maybe not making very good products, probably, but it just seems like how did that happen? And that confuses me.
Yeah, no, it's
And then
kinda
it just
it's similar to, like, we talked about, like, the defunct car brands, like, I was thinking about that, like, what needs to go away? It would be like,
sure.
well, Chrysler's like you think Chrysler and it's like the main overseeing thing, but they only have 2 cars.
Yeah, it's kind of like
Or
one
2
foot's in
2 products in their lineup, and, like, it could easily I mean, the 300's a Charger, and the Pacifica could easily wear a Dodge badge and
yeah.
be called the Caravan again.
Exactly. Yeah, Chrysler has 2 tires in the grave, basically. I mean, and I'm sure like the Pacific is a good vehicle.
Mhm.
I don't know if the 300's it's fine for what it is. I wouldn't want one, but it's just odd. It's very
Mhm.
odd. So
Very odd.
what do you think?
I think the one that gets me I mean, BMW is obviously, like, a one that's kind of been it used to be like Mazda used to be, I guess, where everything was pretty cut and dry. You had a 3, a 5, a
Yep.
7, and then eventually you had an X5 and then an X3, but then everything went bonkers, and I can't even keep track nowadays. So, but that's kind of a given, but the one that really irks me because I'm confused by it is Infinity.
Uh-huh.
They used to be pretty cut and dry. There was their
Sure.
G sedan and
Mhm.
coupe, and then there was an M,
Yep.
and then you went into the SUVs, and it was like a QX, and then an FX, and
Yep.
that was
And then they had a JX for a little bit.
well, see, and then that's when things start getting weird, and then they
Yep.
go through and renamed everything, so the G's no longer the G's, it's a Q50 now. It's like, well, wait, but wasn't it confuses me. So I think of all the manufacturers out there right now, between Infinity and BMW at least still kind of if you want a 3 series, you can still buy a 3 series, but if you want a G37, it's now a Q40.
A
Yeah,
Q40 or a Q50 depending on which
depending
one,
on
right?
which and yeah, so
Yeah.
it's just kind of one of those confusing things, and then because it's confusing to me because the SUVs used to start with Q. So it was
Sure.
like QX56, which was like their version of a Nissan Armada. And uh, what was the other one they had? The QX, that was like the version of a Pathfinder or
The
something. But
50, well, yeah, the QX56 was the Armada, and then the QX, I can't even remember.
yeah, see,
Yeah.
it gets
It
really
wasn't
muddled.
great before. Well, I mean, I understand what they were trying to do. They were trying to remove the engine displacement from the product name, which I think was a good idea. And I'm pretty sure that I think maybe whoever kind of somebody that came to Infinity, I think that renamed all of or that was in charge of renaming the Infinities may have come from Audi. So they were trying to do like an Audi thing, maybe.
Hmm.
So, obviously they have A in front of a lot of their product names,
Right.
which A3, A5, A6 is pretty easy to kind of figure out the hierarchy there. But I think the problem is that Infinity, they didn't have the rights to be able to do Q for because Audi had the Q basically all lined up for their SUVs.
Oh,
So
it's
I think
true.
that's why they ended up using a zero at the end so they could do a Q40, a Q50. So now you basically have, if you put Q on every single one of your product names, it's pretty much meaningless. Just leave it off. Just don't even put it there.
Right.
You know, it's just wasted space. That's kind of like what I liked about Mazda. Technically the name of the Mazda 3 is the Mazda. It's like the Mazda 3.
Yes.
Um, so it's like that was a way for them to get around the trademark of just calling it, the 3 or whatever.
Right.
You could actually like have something there that actually means something. But that's the problem with the Infinity naming is where you've got now you're using 40, 50, 60, and 70 to delineate the vehicles, and now you just have extra character. Like the zero is just an extra character that kind of makes things more confusing. So
I look at it as like, kind of growing up with like seeing all the BMWs and the Mercedes that kind of, give out the displacement of the car. And I'm like 70. I was like, damn, that thing's got a huge engine in it. It's
yeah,
QX70 or whatever it's called now.
yeah,
It's one of those things. But I will have to say, and I want to add this, that I think that a company like Honda or Ford, where they just have regular ass names for their cars. I love
sure,
that. That's
yeah,
great. I think
hmm,
that Toyota, Camry,
yep. And I
there you
wish
go.
Acura would do that.
Yeah, and that's kind of I think Honda's. I just said they're great, but the Acura that's different. They're the fancy ones, but you know
Sure,
they're trying to sound like the fancy guys, like Infinity with their crazy naming scheme, and
sure.
it's just them trying to be upmarket, like the Lexuses and all the other luxury cars that are out there.
Yeah, that just seems. I mean, I understand why they thought they had to do it, but it also, at this point, car companies, like the luxury car companies, have been doing it so long that it just kind of seems antiquated. Like I kind of like what Lincoln's doing. Like I don't, obviously there maybe some of these aren't selling very well. Like the Continental was. I'm glad that they came back with that name, even though nobody bought it.
Right.
Um, I would love to see Acura come back with the Legend and the Integra, and I think Vigor is a pretty terrible name for a car,
Yeah, it was not
um,
very good.
but Legend, it's a great, it's like the perfect name for a car.
Yeah.
The Acura Legend, it was just perfect name for a car.
I-
Um, so I guess we can move on to the next question. Bad rabbit habit. What is your favorite little feature? Something obscure like the swing oscillating vents on the Mazda 626, which are pretty rad if you've seen those
mhm.
in action. Or maybe something more common like a synchronized first gear, or one of his favorites, boost.
Mm,
So, what do you think?
Boost. So I saw this one earlier, and I thought about this question, and it's a silly thing, and I don't know if many other cars have it because my experience with cars from this era is literally just my Daihatsu and then what I remember. But the one
Sure.
thing that the Daihatsu has on it that I think is just this, it's super cool, is on the door. I guess you would say the door jamb up in the. I guess it would be in the very, very not the very top of it, but on the still on the vertical side of it, so it'd be on the B pillar. There's a
Hmm.
bracket that's there, and on the actual door itself are two like metal, I guess you would say, like nubs that basically click into it. And I don't know if it's there for the stability for the seatbelt that's attached to the door pillar, or if it's there to like prevent door sagging or just there for extra structural rigidity. I don't know.
Okay.
I think it's cool though because I don't recall ever seeing a car that has something like that on it. And
Huh.
the doors on the Daihatsu, I mean, it's a two door, and they're big because it's a two door. So I'm assuming it might be something to help compensate with the weight and keeping things straight. So I think that's pretty cool. I've always kind of admired that about it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. That's a neat little thing that I probably would have never noticed.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure.
Yeah. So my cars don't really have anything novel like those Mazda vents. Those are pretty cool. All of my vehicles are pretty basic. I will say on the vehicles that I do have, one thing that I really like, one of my favorite things is properly spaced brake and throttle pedals. So
Mm.
that allows you to do heel and toe downshifting. So I've got several vehicles, and the only one, actually, I've got two. So the Liam Nissan is pretty good for that. But the Nova, my Nova twin cam, somehow this stupid little Econobox, which I'm sure they didn't even change the brake and throttle pedal from the standard Corolla or standard Nova. I'm sure it's exactly the same. It's perfect for heel toe downshifting. And I don't know how that happened, but it just ended up being perfect for that. I do it all the time, even if I'm just commuting in the thing, just because it's fun.
Mhm.
So that is probably one of my favorite little features when that's done right, when actually a manufacturer kind of figures that out. Or in the case of the Nova, maybe it just sort of accidentally happened.
Mhm.
Yeah. I would say the other thing that it's just a favorite little feature and it's something that everybody takes for granted now, but I think about my past coming from cheap cars, having power windows was basically a godsend in the first car that I ever had that in. It's just everybody takes it for granted now, but the first car I had was a Tercel, had these really hard to roll down power windows. I had an 86 Chevy Nova, which and actually my Nova twin cam right now, it's the same thing. It's a four-door. So you've got two windows to roll down in the front and two windows to roll down in the back. So you have to kind of like contort yourself to
Mhm.
reach around the back seat to roll the thing down. And for some reason, this generation Nova and Corolla, after a while, it's just really, really, really hard to crank those back windows. Any of the windows, get really hard to crank. I don't know if they just need to be greased or something, but really, really tough to crank. So when you're trying to like contort yourself and roll those down while you're driving,
Not
um,
not a fun task to do.
no, um, the power windows, you don't have to deal with that. So the
Mhm.
first car that I got that had that was a 91 Prism GSI. And that was it was like a luxury car, the fact that it
Right.
actually had power windows. So it's not really certainly not an obscure feature because I can't really think of one, but it's definitely two features that I really like. And anytime I drive my Nova now, I'm like, ah. Actually, there was a Nova twin cam in a Portland junkyard. It's probably still there. It's that had power windows, and I didn't even realize they made power windows on Novas and Corollas of this generation. But
Mhm.
I would love to go up there and grab those parts, but it's just I can't. I can't go to Portland just for some power windows for my Nova.
Well, I know some weirdo that's got a one of those LKQ pick apart search open for a certain car brand for like 6 states surrounding California.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So you
Yeah.
never know.
Exactly.
You get
Yep.
that one email a year. So,
Yep.
oh, there's one. It's in, Portland or whatever. Well, do I go up
Yeah.
there? So,
I don't know. So let's see.
what else we got?
So Dave LC2 on Instagram, have you ever rented a car while on vacation outside of the US that you wish we could get here? I have not. I've actually not driven outside of the US that much. I've when my sister and her husband and her daughter, they've lived in Australia for quite a few years. So when I went there, I just used they had like an early 2000s RAV4. Obviously, the steering wheel's on the wrong side of the car.
Mhm.
Um, but in the times that I've been to Europe or Mexico, we didn't rent anything.
Mhm.
So I don't have any good stories on that, but other than just trying to drive a wrong wheel drive RAV4 in Australia it was fun. There's these weird things called hook turns there. I don't know if you've ever heard of those. I can't really
No,
describe them, but there's just kind of these just you just have to look them up on YouTube to kind of see how they work. I remember the first time I had to do a hook turn in Melbourne. It was kind of challenging and confusing to me. I can't even really explain it. Just look it up on YouTube and you'll see how
Sounds
kind
like
of
you have
weird
to
it
use the
is.
emergency brake.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just one of the
Yeah,
parts of the hook turn.
yeah, yeah. So I don't really have any good examples for that one, but
The only time I've driven internationally, and I'm gonna, you can't see my air quotes around it, was when my wife and I were in Toronto a couple years ago, and she went ahead. She was there a few days early because she had to be there for work, and then we just made a long weekend out of it. So I met up with her there, and I tried every damn thing I could to get her to rent Nissan Micra, and
yeah.
unfortunately, they did not have any Nissan
Oh
Micras.
no.
So the closest I can come to answering this or to saying it would be I drove a Canadian spec Nissan Versa Note.
Ooh.
I think it's exactly the same as the American spec. But yeah,
Okay.
no, it was a great little car. We drove around in Canada, drove to the from Toronto down to the Niagara Falls, and
Hmm.
yeah, everything was fine. It's all in kilometers, but as long as the speedometer is in kilometers, then you're fine. It's like, oh, okay, it's 60 kph right here. Oh, we're doing it. Okay, cool.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
um, I really wanted to drive, well, not drive, but I wanted to ride Vespa in Italy when I was in Rome.
Hmm.
But and they offer it. Like you can, as tourists, you can go rent a Vespa and tour the city.
Yeah.
And I was like all about it until like the first day we were like really out in the city and we were walking around, and I was like, no, I'll die. I'm gonna die. I'm not gonna ride a Vespa around.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, so I do hope to accomplish the task of driving something that we definitely cannot get here, like some sort of silly K car. In my hope to go to Japan in a couple years, I would love to do that. Just take some silly K car and drive all around over there. That would be
Yeah,
the
totally.
ultimate for me.
Nice. Okay, so Tyson Huggy said, he asked, which vehicle are you taking to Radwood, LA in December?
Mm.
Daihatsu?
Yeah, I would definitely say a Daihatsu. I do have to admit something though.
Uh-oh.
After that last episode of the defunct car brands, I've
Yes.
kind of been looking at some really sweet, really cheap Saturn SLs.
Ooh, okay.
So who knows? We'll see. I don't know. I just bought a new bass guitar, so
Yeah,
funds are a little short, but yeah, these things can be very cheap. Ethan, I saw one for $200, and I was like, thought about that for a quick second. And I was like, oh, that might be kind
yeah,
of fun just to, you know, enjoy the, Spring Hill, Tennessee-ness of it.
sure.
So
Well, I mean, I'd say, I don't know how much you paid for your base, but you might be able to do a straight trade for a
I'm not,
Saturn, a
I'm not,
Saturn
tr- I'm not,
SL.
no,
Okay.
no.
Okay. All right. Um, so I will, if I can get it finished, and this is kind of a joke because I haven't started, but I will be taking the 1990 Pontiac Turbo Grand Prix,
Yes.
even if I have to drive it with this crappy malfunctioning ABS system, it's going to end up there. So I've been talking with some shops to help remove the ABS system. It's just one of those things where nobody even remembers what the 1990 Pontiac Turbo Grand Prix is. Nobody wants to work on a 1990 Pontiac Turbo Grand Prix.
Hmm.
And so if you talk to if I go to just a standard car repair place, they're like, yeah, we don't want to deal with this car. So I've been trying to find some sort of automotive customization shops that might want to work on it. And even those shops are kind of like, nah, not interested.
Hmm.
So I think part of the problem is I don't have the fabrication skills required to do the work myself. And it's basically I have to remove this ABS system that parts are impossible to find. And I'm not comfortable doing that myself. And my Lemons teammates that said they would help me aren't really that interested in anymore. So my car is just sitting at my friend's house. So I have to bring it back. So I found a shop in LA that might want to help me with it. So
Hmm.
I'm inching my way towards getting that car fixed.
If not, we're
And
gonna
once
have to leave at like 3 a.m. the night before or the day of, and go down the 405 with the hazards on
Sure. Yeah.
to make it
Yes.
there.
Yeah. So if anybody has needs to know what this car is like driving, it's basically it feels worse than driving an old car with manual brakes with no power assist or anything. So there's basically no boost. There's nothing. It's just the strength of your leg that's stopping the vehicle. So yeah, it's not fun. It's not safe to drive. And also, when I do get it fixed, it's still not going to be worth any more than what it was when I bought it. So
Right.
one of those cars, just the values of those vehicles, nobody's lusting after them yet. So,
Well, if you
but
take it to if you take it to the show and everyone sees it, maybe then the
yes,
the Turbo Grand Prix bubble will start to
yes.
inflate.
I think I mean, it's definitely one of those cars that I love how it looks. It's just
Oh yeah, it's
it's
super
it's a
sweet.
it's a pretty cool looking car. So if for whatever reason that doesn't happen because I don't fix it or I push it off a cliff or something, I might end up buying something else. So we'll see.
We'll
We will
see.
see. Cameron Moreno asks, "What's your worst or best car breakdown? Ever get stranded or have to makeshift parts to get home?"
Mm.
So, did I talk about losing my drive shaft in my Buick? I can't remember
No.
if I. Okay.
Let's.
Okay. Yes. It's funny because I have so many car breakdown stories.
Mhm.
It's like hard to keep them straight of like when I've actually which ones I've talked about and which ones I haven't. Um, so I had a 1965 Buick Special, sort of a Buick Special. It was a Buick Special, but I had kind of a Skylark front end on it. It was kind of a mishmash of things. I had put like disc brakes, like I'd done like overhauled all the suspension. It had a Buick 464 cubic inch engine in it, which was basically a bored out 455,
Mhm.
and that just was a giant motor, huge gas guzzler, and it had like huge exhaust with X pipe and everything. It was had one of those like Hurst ratchet shifters, and like total like everything you could do to try to make a Buick like kind of fast.
Mhm.
So this was kind of a fun car. It was super loud. It smelled like gas every time you drove it. It was pretty neat. But and I usually kind of drove it pretty slowly when I would bring it to work, just because I was worried that it would break down. Because it was just like I'm not an engineer, and I'm taking a car that was engineered by people that went to school for like engineering and spent years like coming up with the proper ways to design a car, and I'm basically just turning everything on its head and creating something completely new. So it was pretty reliable for a couple months, and then one day I was driving to work, going down the 101 freeway down this hill, and saying I was in the slow lane because wasn't going too fast, and I just all of a sudden, just the gas pedal wasn't doing anything. I heard like a clunk, and I heard a bump, and I kind of like felt like I drove over something, and the gas pedal wasn't doing anything, and I started trying to shift, and I'm like, oh wait. I quickly realized I looked in my rearview mirror and I saw my drive shaft kind of like rolling behind my car. So I had realized that I had driven over the drive shaft, and I see
Ho,
this
ho, ho.
and I see this huge truck just drive over it. And then I was like, "Oh crap. I hope that doesn't like get launched into somebody's windshield or something like that." So I was just like sweating and just worrying that something really, really bad was going to happen. And then I think I pretty much realized that it got punted over to the breakdown lane or the side of the road. So I was took a sigh of relief. And then I realized, okay, well, I don't have any transmission. I have a transmission, but I don't have any way to drive the wheels anymore. So I'm just kind of coasting down this hill, and eventually there was this perfectly located a breakdown area where trucks parked and stuff like that. And I just rolled it slowly until I lightly tapped a sign, and that allowed me to stop because I couldn't put it into park, and I didn't
Mhm.
have a parking brake. So I was trying to figure out where could I put it where it's not going to roll away. So I was able to like kind of like just gently rest it against the sign. And then, so it took a while to get the thing towed and everything. I got it towed back home and all that. Um, and then, so that was like the breakdown was kind of dramatic just because the drive shaft was flying in the air and I was worried it was going to hurt somebody. But other than that, I just got the car towed home, and so a couple days later, I I drove my little Toyota truck down that same stretch of road, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna see if I can find that drive shaft and see how bad a shape it is, or maybe just like not litter.
Mhm.
So I kind of pulled over. I looked up ahead of me and I was like, oh, there it is. There's this big drive shaft on the side of the road. I get out of my car, cars whizzing by me, and I quickly picked it up, throw it in the back of my pickup truck, and start driving. And then I get on the freeway, and then literally 20 seconds later, I see another drive shaft on the side of the road. And I'm like, wait, that's my drive shaft. So I pulled over, I got out, and then I looked at it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is definitely my drive shaft. So I took the one drive shaft off the street and then I put the other one back on the side of the road. So what are the chances that there would be
That's crazy.
two drive shafts that are just within seconds of each other on the 101 freeway? But um, there was. So apparently that was a drive shaft eating section of the 101 freeway.
Oh my goodness. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
So yeah,
Well,
I was able to grab that one, and I feel like I was able to repair it. I wasn't too damaged, or I'm not exactly sure what I did, but basically the reason why it fell off is just because I had a rear end from a '72 Skylark, and everything was mismatched, so it just wasn't quite measured right. And it just popped out. Sucked because it was
oh,
a custom drive shaft too. It was like a $400 or $500 drive shaft. So
yeah.
I was really bummed when I drove over it.
Goodness.
Yep.
Well,
So
mine's not as well. It's kind of an interesting story.
okay.
Um, so right after high school, I took my first road trip with my friends, and we took his 1969 Volkswagen bus,
Yeah.
and the goal was to go all the way up to Redwood City, where his uncle lived, and then we were going to go drive around in San Francisco because we were a bunch of like hippie kids and stuff like that.
Sure.
So the bus drove fine. It took a long time to get up there with many stops. It was great fun. It was a Westphalia top that had broken, and so he had taken the Westphalia top off and had a big old piece of canvas that kind of just snapped in place, so like we can have the whole top open. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, everything was going fine on the trip. The bus was running great. It was running really good. And then we're doing the whole San Francisco thing, and I kid you not, we're at the corner of Haight and Ashbury, and we're doing our thing, walking around, looking at all the shops, and just being kids. And we go to take off to head back over to his uncle's place in Redwood City, and we start the bus up, and it's very hilly in San
Mm-hmm.
Francisco if you've never been
Yes.
or haven't ever watched any movies or read anything about San Francisco. And my buddy was driving the bus. We would all take turns driving. So, my friend who actually owned the bus was driving it, and he takes off from the parking spot, and we were parked on an uphill, and then we hear this huge pop. I'm
Ooh.
like, what the hell was that? And it turns out the clutch cable had decided that it no longer wanted to be attached in the very front or at the pedal box of the bus.
Sure. Yeah.
So we got it back to his uncle's place by, I think he just didn't, I don't know what the hell he did. I think he just shoved it in gear.
Sure.
So, it was great for the bus. So we got it back to his uncle's place, and being, the late 90s, there were still Volkswagen shops around. So we got our hands on a new clutch cable for it. And we went to install it, and my buddy's doing it, and he's down there for like an hour, and just like, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, there's a little clip that goes around that holds the clutch cable basically onto the pedal box, and it wasn't
Sure.
it wasn't going on.
Yeah.
So I go down there and I mess with it for like an hour, and I felt I was a little more mechanically inclined, so I was like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. I'll just do it. But sure enough, it didn't fit.
Oh.
So, and this, we're in Redwood City, and I was due to start college in just like the next week, and it was it was like, okay, we can't just be screwing around up here. We need to get back home. And what we ended up doing is the most hippiest thing ever, which was we had a roll of hemp twine.
Okay.
So I took the hemp twine and tied the tightest knot I could on to hold that clip onto the clutch cable that held it onto into the actual clutch pedal underneath the bus. It was right underneath the front of the bus, because if you've ever driven one, everything's all up there.
Yep.
Made it home, and then it ended up staying on the bus all the way up until he ended up getting rid of it, which was like probably 5 years later. It stayed on
That's
that way,
funny.
and it was just a tied on piece of hemp rope that held that stupid clip on. So there you go. That's
There you
my
go.
bus breakdown story.
Well, that's good that it ended up being the fix ended up really matching the city pretty
Oh
well
yeah,
too.
it
You got
was.
hemp rope, you got Haight and
Yeah,
Ashbury.
it was. It
Yeah.
was. It was
Yeah,
written in the
that's funny.
stars. That's what it felt like. So it was just hilarious. So,
That's funny.
yep. Good old
Nice.
tie-dyed shirts.
Yeah, there was a when I did the Gambler 500, there was one. I say I've never really had to make any makeshift parts other than like tying my shifter knob to the glove box when my Scirocco would not
Mm.
stay in fifth. But when I did the Gambler 500, there was a 65 Chevy that had done the Gambler 500, and they got stuck on this coming down this big rocky mountain, and they broke a tie rod. And I feel like they used like a broomstick or something and a bunch of duct tape just to
Jeez.
tow it out of there. So I think I just remember looking under that thing and just seeing just like tape, rolls of tape. You know, they weren't able to drive under their own power, but they couldn't get towed if both of their wheels were pointed in the wrong
Right.
direction.
No,
So
that's true.
yeah,
Oh,
so I
that's
think they use like a broomstick or something and just duct tape.
broomstick and duct tape.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep. Okay, so let's see if we got a couple more questions. So
Sure.
the Blue XB, if you were to go on a grand tour of Europe through Italy, Monaco, and the rest of the French Riviera, what car would you drive?
Mm.
So I didn't really think about this one too much. Sorry, the Blue XB, but I just immediately went for 65 Buick Riviera because of the name. That's really the only
Oh.
connection that I can think of. There's no other connection to the French Riviera or that area other than the name. But it is, I'm not huge into the cars from the 60s, but that's a really beautiful car. Probably want the 65 Buick Riviera Grand Sport.
It's a wide car for those roads, but
It is.
everyone will get out of your way. So
Yeah, that's true.
that's the way to
I
do
know.
it.
It doesn't make sense in any stretch, in any sense of what you'd want actually there to enjoy those roads, but I would just be very literal.
It's funny. I gravitated towards something older too because I don't know. I guess that's just maybe the region or something like that. Just like complements itself to like an older car.
Uh-huh.
At least kind of that's where my mind went.
Yeah,
So
that's exactly what I was thinking too.
um, I chose something that's more Grand Tour esque, and
Okay.
I've recently kind of become getting a little bit of a infatuation over the Aston Martin uh, V8 Vantage from like the
Mm.
80s. So
Yep.
um, I just like the way those things are. I mean, everyone calls them like British Mustangs and stuff because essentially it's a V8 rear wheel drive manual transmission, but
Uh-huh.
they look so cool. I like the way they look. They look very tough. I mean, it's I know a lot of people and the listeners were expecting me to say some econo shitbox,
Sure, exactly.
but no, Aston Martin, V8 Vantage. That's a grand
Okay.
touring car. Nice V8, manual transmission. That'd be good. You can put the luggage in the back, and uh, yeah, I think that would be a good car to
So
take.
like what year? What year are you thinking?
So I'm thinking along the lines of like the early to mid '80s.
Okay, let's
Um,
see. What does like an 80s one look like?
so the reason I started kind of looking into these cars a couple weeks ago was that car week up there at Monterey, and our buddies over at DWA posted up a picture of a 1986 Aston Martin V8 Vantage Zagato body, and it's red, and it's a very interesting car. It looks great. That's the Zagato. They're like a kind of like a design house, and they'll rebody a car or something. And they've
Sure.
made some beautiful Aston Martins, a DB4 Zagato, if you
Okay,
want to.
that car looks cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so that's the kind of car that's the kind of Aston Martin. It kind of got me into like looking at these things, and I was like, I'm not that I can ever afford one of them, but I was like, yeah, that would be a fun car, I think, to have. It's a bit different and offbeat from the typical like '86 Ford Mustang or Chevy
Sure.
Camaro or something like that. Not that
Yep.
it's even kind of in that same league, but it is, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really like that car, and I think that would be a really fun car to take and cruise around the French Riviera, and of course, go into Monaco and go drive the Grand Prix circuit and this big old
Sure.
V8 beast. And
Yes. Yep. Very cool.
mhm.
All right. So let's see. I think we have one question left.
Ooh,
So grandmas underscore civic underscore SI, grandma's civic SI.
mm,
What three car manufacturers do you think had the best or most interesting lineups in the 80s?
oh,
So yeah, I
three.
mean, yeah, three manufacturers. This was actually pretty easy for me. I would go for Toyota, Honda, and Nissan,
Hmm.
and mainly just from my experience of you know in the 80s. Like I did, my first car I got in the 90s. So I was just thinking about like what my parents were dealing with when they were driving in the 80s.
Mhm.
And they had American cars for their whole lives other than like a Volkswagen Super Beetle that they had in the 70s or something. And I just remember like their cars just were not reliable and they had problems with them. They were always having issues and they had Pontiacs, they had Fords, they had Chevys, and they were nice looking and powerful and had some good features, but I just remember they always had lots of issues with them. And I'm just thinking back to like back then it was just sort of you accepted, at least in my family, that once the car hit 100,000 miles, it was done. You
Mhm.
couldn't, it wouldn't last. You have to think about like, okay, we got to get something new. And then when Toyota, Honda, Nissan really kind of started infiltrating at least the US market, it was just this breath of fresh air of like, oh wow, this is they're aiming right for where the big three domestic manufacturers were failing. So reliability, efficiency, and I think they offered some really great cars. So
Mhm.
like I think about back to like the MR2, the Toyota MR2 is super cool. Like I would love to have one of those now. And even just thinking of like just the standard stuff like the Corollas and the Tercels,
Mhm.
that they came out with in that era. They were just showing buyers that cars could last longer than 100,000 miles and you could depend on them. And, that's when my dad bought he bought an 89 Tercel. And then from that day forward, they never bought another domestic car just because they had such good luck with their like it's just like night and day how much better that Tercel was than anything that they had before, just in terms of like never giving them a problem.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and then, like, think about, like, there's other, like, pretty neat cars that they brought to the market, like, Nissan had the Pulsar NX with the wagon
Yeah.
back. You know, they had, like, early some of their Maximas talked, it was, like, kinda
Mhm.
cool little things, and you just think about, like, the Civics and Accords from that era just being super reliable and durable, and plus, think about, like, some of the cars that were m made by these manufacturers that did not make it to the US, like the R31 Skylines, like,
Mhm.
that's just amazing. There's a lot of great cars that were coming from Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, which I kind of feel like those were probably the most successful of the Japanese automakers right in the late 80s.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, maybe it's like I can't like say that like any one of them was like just blowing anybody out of the water, but just in general, when those kind of like hit some critical mass and really people started to see what they were missing out missing
Mhm.
out on. I think that's kind of a big thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if we're talking about those cars that had unique, I guess, lineups, I would say, definitely those ones they cater to everything. They had a commuter car, they had like a sporty car, they had a car that you could fit people in, a car that you can haul things, or a truck,
Yeah.
should I say. So,
Yeah.
but I think about things like that were like when I think of the 80s, I think of things that like maybe were big then but are now gone. So I'm thinking something along
Sure.
the lines of like Geo, Isuzu,
Uh-huh.
those ones, because that's only two, but you had that sort of thing. Maybe not necessarily all the way with like Geo, but like they offered the tracker eventually, and then down to the Metro, they had all that, and then Isuzu was kind of the same thing. You had the iMarks and
Mhm.
the Impulse, and up to the Isuzu Trooper. So it was kind of a well varied lineup that they had available to the public to purchase, and it was very 80s. That's just kind of the way it was. It was a time, with all the innovation that was coming up, and you know, even though the majority of those cars, I think even some of those Geos were just kind of rebadged Suzuki's and whatnot. I think that's kind of like probably like one of the more varied ones. I don't know. That's just kind of my
Sure.
opinion on it.
Yeah.
And then
Well, I mean, maybe Mazda too. I mean, if you
yeah,
think
that
about
I
they
was
got
thinking
like
Mazda at the same time because in the 80s, that was predating like their MPV van, but at least, you had the RX-7s and you had the 323s and the 626s. So,
oh yeah, the MX-6 and the MX-6 Turbo.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
and then they had some things like the 323 GTX, which I would love one of those if I could
yes.
keep it running and not completely exploding the transmission. Um, yeah, and of course they had the B series trucks. I still like how those look. Those are really cool looking trucks.
Yeah, no,
Um,
totally. But yeah, other than that, the other thing I can think of that had like a really cool lineup would have been like I can say any of those same Japanese manufacturers, but their Japanese lineup that they had. Honda has
sure.
so many more cars that they offer for their domestic market than they offered in the United States, just because
Yeah.
they had something for everything different size. There was the city turbo, and then you had all sorts of other fun cars they had too.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah,
Yeah, we get screwed.
yeah,
We get screwed.
we do,
Even just like the boring cars that they get over there, I would totally wish they sold here.
right?
Um, yeah, we
Nope.
just crossovers and SUVs and trucks for us. That's it.
Yep, that's it.
That's it.
Eclipse
That's
crosses
all
for
we
everybody.
exactly. Everybody gets an Eclipse Cross, and it's not the cool Eclipse.
Mm-mm.
Um, all right. Well, lots of good, great questions.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, everybody,
Yes,
for submitting some lovely, wonderful questions.
yes, thank you.
And we'll have to do this again at some point in the future. Hopefully, we'll have some new guests on the show pretty soon,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe some old guests too. We'll have to
Mm.
see what everybody's schedule is like. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll try to keep it varied and keep it interesting, and try to find some other people in the auto industry that we can talk to. And we gotta hopefully at some point we can find some travel people we can talk to. We gotta maybe try to see if we can come across a park ranger that wants to be on our show that wants to
Yes,
tell us about some cool areas.
that's the
So
that's uh the Hello Road podcast special. We'll
yes,
have
exactly. Nice.
we'll get
All right. Well, I think that's probably it for
yeah
our episode today. If everybody wants to be super, super nice and give us a nice rating on iTunes, we'd really appreciate that. And where can everybody find you, Paul, on the social medias?
on the medias. You can find me at Paul's Finest Hour on both Instagram and Twitter.
Sweet, sweet. And I can be found at youtube.com/hello road. Hopefully, pretty soon we'll have some updates on my Porsche 944 Turbo.
Mm.
Uh, and then you can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at Mr. Ethan Tufts. I think that's it.
Yep. Thank you,
Right.
everybody. Have a good night.
Bye.